Be Me Go by Brittany, 33 years old, lead brand strategist at Northvale Creative, sitting in a conference room built for 9 people. There are 4 chairs, filled me Megan, from operations. Some junior assistant clutching a laptop, like it might save him, and 1 empty seat with a client folder, sitting on it. Today was supposed to be the big pitch client, flew in from Minneapolis. Just for this meeting, except the people who actually built the presentation are nowhere to be found. Caleb, senior art lead, missing Marcus, account supervisor, missing Evan, creative chief, missing. None of them are here because half the office is refusing to come in, all because of the bathrooms. Yes, seriously. Whole company is imploding over toilets 3 weeks ago. This place was normal now. It feels like a hostage situation over who was allowed to pee where, and I'm stuck dead center watching everything crack apart. All because our new CEO wanted to make some grand statement, without thinking through what it would actually do. But that's skipping ahead. Start from the top. Northvale Creative is a mid-sized ad agency, about 140 employees, mostly creatives, strategy people, and client services. Nice office in a polished downtown building, been here 7 years, came in as an entry-level account. Coordinator kept my head down. Did the work, clawed my way up to lead brand strategist for a long time. It was a genuinely solid place to work. Good people, decent leadership, fun projects we handled. Campaigns for apparel brands, software companies, hotel chains, lifestyle stuff. The whole vibe was relaxed hoodies, sneakers. Music in the studio. Area cold drinks in the office kitchen on Fridays. People actually liked showing up. Ideas happened fast when everyone was in the same room. Designers leaning over copywriters' shoulders, strategy people drifting into brainstorms. Account leads jumping into review sessions on the fly. The chemistry was basically the reason clients hired us. You can't fake that. Over Teams calls, our old CEO retired last spring after being there forever. Guy had spent 2 decades building the place from scratch, wasn't flashy. Just decent board, brought in a replacement. Vanessa Crowley, 47 years old, came over from a much larger agency in Boston. Stacked resume, industry awards everywhere. Speaker panels, trade publication interviews, also very loud online about progressive workplace politics. Her LinkedIn looked like a non-stop stream of posts about reshaping company culture, dismantling outdated systems, creating truly inclusive spaces. My first thought was, fine, new perspective. Isn't automatically bad. Creative companies are supposed to be open to new ideas. First month, Vanessa mostly just watched, met with department leads, sat in on reviews, asked a million questions about workflow, gave a polished speech about her vision for the agency. Said she wanted us to become a leader, not only in creative output, but in workplace innovation. Everyone nodded, like that sounded great. Second month, she started changing things. Updated the family leave policy, honestly. Good move, rolled out more flexible scheduling. Also, good set up an employee group for L, G, B, T, Q staff. Fine by me, we had a few gay and lesbian co-workers who seemed happy about it at that point. Nothing felt insane. Then came the bathroom email, month 3. Vanessa sends out a company-wide message. Subject line was something like building a truly inclusive environment. Already knew this was about to be one of those emails she wrote, that traditional men's and women's bathrooms were exclusionary, said they created stress for transgender and non-binary employees, said people who didn't fit neatly into binary categories should not have to feel alienated at work. Effective immediately. Every bathroom in the office would be all gender door signs, would be replaced. Any employee could use any restroom. The whole thing was framed like some brave leap toward real inclusion. Read it twice, didn't know how to feel. On one hand, I got what she was trying to say. We had maybe a couple employees who identified as non-binary. One person was transitioning and had already been using the bathroom that matched how they identified. Nobody had made a big deal out of it. There hadn't been some office crisis over that. But this was different now. Every bathroom was open to everybody all the time. The women's room where I had touched up mascara before client calls, where I'd had private little vent sessions with coworkers, where I could breathe for 2 minutes without an audience. Now any guy from media, buying, or design could just stroll in whenever reaction started. Almost immediately, the women were uneasy, but mostly kept it to themselves. Nobody wanted to be the person who got labeled intolerant. The men were actually more direct about it. Caleb stopped by my desk, looking genuinely baffled, asked if I'd read the email. Yet I said, yeah, asked what he thought. He goes, honestly, I don't want to use a bathroom with women. Then immediately starts trying to explain. Himself says, it isn't anti-woman, says it's just weird, says, I'm supposed to stand at a urinal and then one of my coworkers walks in? How is that not awkward for everybody? And I had no real answer. Marcus had the same reaction. Said the bathrooms weren't even built for mixed use. Urinals were right out in the open, barely any privacy. He wasn't trying to be offensive, he just didn't want female coworkers walking in while he was taking a leak, which honestly sounded fair, first week under the new setup. I walked to the bathroom and stopped cold at the door. The old women's sign was gone, replaced with an all-gender placard, just stood there for a second, staring at it like maybe the sign would change back. If I waited long enough, finally pushed the door open. Nobody inside, I used the stall as fast as possible. Washed my hands, came back out, and nearly bumped into Caleb. Heading in, we made the most painful eye contact of my life. Both looked away immediately, like we caught each other doing something illegal. Whole thing felt off, that kept happening all week. Women walking in while guys were at the urinals, men entering and then freezing because a female coworker was at the mirror. Everybody pretending this was completely normal and not weird as hell, but it wasn't normal. We'd all spent our entire lives using separate bathrooms. You don't rewire that overnight because somebody sends a polished email by the end of the first week. People were complaining, not out loud in meetings, not in official channels, just in hushed conversations, private Slack messages, little side comments in the kitchen. Megan told me she'd started going to the restroom on another floor, one they hadn't changed yet, said she just wanted to use the bathroom without turning it into some tense social experiment, said she wanted 2 quiet minutes without wondering who might come through the door. I told her I'd been doing the exact same kind of avoidance, started slipping out to the cafe next door, just so I wouldn't have to deal with it. Felt ridiculous paying for iced coffee. I didn't even want just to use their restroom. Week 2 is when the guys really started pushing back. A group of them went to HR together, led by Evan, our creative chief. 31 years old, been with the agency about 6 years. Not some right-wing culture war guy. Either pretty liberal, actually had openly supported gay coworkers for years, was vocal about trans rights too. But even he thought this policy was too much. They went in trying to be reasonable, asked if there could be some kind of middle option. Keep a few bathrooms, men's and women's, convert a few others to all gender for anyone who wanted. That give people a choice instead of forcing one setup on. Everybody. Honestly sounded like the most practical solution possible. HR director, Elaine took their concerns upstairs to Vanessa. Came back with an answer that was basically a hard, no compromise, no split system. Vanessa said, the whole point was to normalize inclusion across the office, said keeping separate options would undermine the policy, said it would send the message that all gender bathrooms were somehow unusual or lesser. So the rule stayed exactly as written. Evan and the rest of them were pissed, not screaming, pissed more, that dead-eyed. Why did we even bother trying to talk? Kinda pissed. They had gone through the proper channel, kept it respectful, offered a totally workable middle ground, and got shut down, like their concerns didn't count. That was when the boycott started. Week 3, Evan stopped coming into the office, said he'd work remotely until the policy changed. Caleb followed the next morning, then Marcus, then several more guys from design, then a few from accounts, then a couple from production. It snowballed fast within days. Around 35 male employees were refusing to come in, basically more than a quarter of the company. The office started feeling hollow, rows of desks just sitting there, empty chairs pushed in monitors, dark meeting rooms, half full. At best the kind of work we were good at, stopped functioning right away. Collaboration-heavy projects just stalled out. I needed Caleb in person for a pitch deck revision. He was technically available from home, but it wasn't the same at all. Screen sharing and video calls are fine for checking boxes. They are garbage compared to sitting side by side and reworking things live. We built good work off momentum. Someone throws out an idea, someone else tweaks it, somebody else jumps in with a better angle. That whole rhythm was gone. Vanessa finally addressed the boycott. At an all-hands meeting, got up there like she was delivering some historic statement, said she was disappointed by the resistance but not discouraged, said meaningful progress always triggered backlash, said the men refusing to come in were prioritizing outdated personal comfort over the dignity of marginalized coworkers, said she would not reward that kind of resistance with compromise policy was staying in place. Then she basically said, if people couldn't handle inclusive restrooms, maybe North Vale wasn't the company for them. Sitting there hearing that made my stomach drop. She was practically daring them to leave, and worse than that. She was framing every objection as bigotry, like there was no room at all for normal human discomfort, no nuance, no acknowledgement that privacy mattered, just ideology, just slogans. The women in the room looked uneasy too, because most of us hadn't demanded this either. Most of us weren't exactly thrilled about the bathroom change ourselves, but nobody wanted to say that too loudly. We were getting this unspoken message that real progressive people were supposed to support it. And if you questioned it, even a little, then something was wrong with you. Week 4 is when the productivity mess got ugly. 3 major projects were suddenly behind schedule, without the creative team physically there. Everything slowed down, review cycles took longer, feedback got sloppier, small decisions dragged out for hours. One big client presentation had to be pushed. The Minneapolis one I mentioned earlier, they agreed to reschedule, but they were obviously irritated. You could hear it in every email and every fake polite sentence another client called, asking if there was some internal issue happening at the agency. They'd heard rumors, wanted to know if their campaign was still on track. I had to sit there and tell them everything was under control, while knowing full well nothing was under control. Quarterly revenue estimates started sliding, new business pitches were being delayed, timelines were slipping across the board. The company was torching money over a bathroom policy week. Somebody leaked the whole thing to the press. Probably one of the guys staying home, though nobody ever proved it. Local story hit. First then, a bigger outlet picked it up. Headline was something like, ad agency ripped apart over all-gender bathroom mandate, and then it exploded. Suddenly we were a national argument. Everybody online had a take. Half the internet was calling Vanessa brave, saying she was standing up for trans employees against a bunch of fragile, bigoted men. The other half was calling her a tyrant, saying she was forcing her politics onto staff who were just asking for basic privacy. Our company name got dragged straight into culture, war. Hell, clients started calling non-stop, not to talk about campaigns, not to approve creative, just to ask whether they wanted their brand attached to us. Right now, 2 smaller clients paused their contracts entirely, said they wanted to wait and see how things developed. One major client asked for a direct call with Vanessa, herself wanted to talk about the mess directly. Brand damage was no longer theoretical. It was happening in real time. Week 6, the financial pressure got serious. We were down an estimated $450,000 in delayed work alone. Then add the frozen contracts, then add all the pitch opportunities we couldn't properly chase while the office was half dead. Money was bleeding out everywhere. The board finally started paying attention. They had brought Vanessa in to expand the agency, not light it on fire over a bathroom policy. One of the board members, Richard, called for a meeting with Vanessa and the department heads. I got invited too, supposedly to speak for. The team's getting hit hardest by the disruption. Meeting was brutal from the second it started. Richard didn't waste time. Looked right at Vanessa and asked if this policy was really worth wrecking the company. Over, Vanessa didn't blink, said she would not compromise on inclusion, said the employees boycotting were in the wrong, said they would either return eventually or be replaced. Richard asked how long that would take, asked how much more revenue we'd lose while waiting for that fantasy to happen. Vanessa had nothing solid, just vague leadership talk, no timeline, no real cost estimate, no actual plan. Richard turned to the rest of us and asked what we thought. Room went quiet. I took a breath and spoke up, said I believed in making the workplace respectful for trans employees, said that part wasn't the problem. The problem was how this had been rolled out. No real employee input beforehand, no discussion, no attempt to build consensus, no practical option for people with genuine privacy concerns, and no distinction at all between normal discomfort and actual bigotry. I said the result had been a split, staff-wrecked productivity, strained client trust, and national-level bad press. This wasn't what inclusion was supposed to look like. Megan backed me up, said most of the women she'd talked to weren't especially happy with the bathroom setup. Either said they'd mostly adapted because they didn't want to get labeled intolerant, but if they had an honest choice, most would rather have traditional bathrooms still available, plus a neutral option for anyone who preferred it. Richard just nodded, then looked back at Vanessa. Said the board had already talked through the situation. Said they respected what she was trying to do, but they did not respect the rigidity. Said a compromise would be put in place immediately. All gender restrooms would stay. But men's and women's bathrooms would also be brought back 3 options instead of one forced model. Everyone could use what matched their identity or comfort level. Vanessa looked like she wanted to set the table on fire. Said it was a step backward. Said it was capitulating to prejudice. Richard told her it was recognizing reality. Said cultural change doesn't happen because an executive declares it into existence. Said alienating your own workforce was not. Leadership meeting ended with the compromise ordered on the spot. Vanessa got a formal warning for making a major policy shift unilaterally. She was told future changes like that needed stakeholder input. First the next week, the signs on the bathrooms changed again. Now there were 3 men's room, women's room, all gender room. New signage explained that employees were welcome to use whichever space fit their identity or preference almost immediately. The guys who had been boycotting started coming back. Evan came in, first looked tired, more than anything, but also relieved. Caleb came back after that, made some joke about finally reuniting with his desk chair. Marcus returned too, said he never wanted the whole thing to become a standoff, just wanted someone to actually listen within 2 weeks. Attendance was basically normal. Again, the office finally felt alive. People were in the hallways, creative rooms were full. Again, teams were actually bouncing ideas off each other instead of staring through webcams. The thing that had made us good in the first place came back. The handful of non-binary employees mostly used the all-gender restroom, which was pretty much what they had wanted all along. Anyway, an option that felt comfortable, not some office-wide mandate that made everybody tense. The employee who had been transitioning said she preferred the women's room. Anyway, said she always had the policy. Hadn't really helped her at all. It had just created drama. She never asked to be part of. About a month after the compromise, productivity was back where it should be. Clients who had paused. Things resumed. New business pitches started moving again. The crisis was basically over. Vanessa stayed on as CEO for a while, but she was obviously weaker. After that, her big transformative vision had slammed into reality. The board kept a much closer eye on her from then on. And I think she learned something she probably should have known. Already, leadership isn't just having a vision. It's knowing how to roll it out. It's getting people with you instead of dragging them behind you. About 6 months later, she left, quietly took a job at a nonprofit that was supposedly more aligned with her values. Her farewell email was exactly what you'd expect. Talked about needing to work somewhere. Her vision wouldn't be constrained. Honestly, that was probably better for everyone. The new CEO was a guy named Daniel, practical type. Collaborative, not obsessed with making ideological statements. Just cared about doing strong work and treating people decently. Simple approach. Worked a lot better a year later. I got promoted to VP of brand strategy. The agency had fully recovered. By then, actually did better than before. Won new accounts. Stabilized. Everything grew. The bathroom fiasco turned into one of those stories. People barely brought up anymore. We still had all 3 restroom options. Nobody complained. People used whatever felt right to them. Which is exactly how it should have been from day one. I still think about the whole mess. Sometimes mostly what it taught me about leadership and change. Vanessa wasn't wrong for caring about inclusion. Trans and non-binary people deserve respect. They deserve to be accommodated. That part has never been controversial to me. What matters is how you do it. Because the way you implement inclusion matters just as much as the intention behind it. When you force a policy through and ignore real concerns, people push back. When you treat ordinary discomfort like moral failure, you kill any chance of honest conversation. When somebody offers compromise and you refuse on principle, that isn't strength. That's just rigidity dressed up as conviction. The men who boycotted were not raging bigots. They were co-workers with privacy concerns. And the part nobody wanted to admit out loud was that plenty of women felt the same way. They just kept their mouths shut. Their concerns counted too. That was the whole thing people kept missing. Real inclusion has to include everybody in the building, not only the group leadership happens to be focused on. In that moment, the compromise worked because it gave people options. Nobody had to walk into a situation that made them uneasy. Trans employees had a restroom option that felt safe to them. People who wanted traditional spaces had those too. Everybody got to pick what worked best. That's what inclusion actually looks like in real life. Choices, not mandates, respect for different needs. An understanding that one setup is not going to fit every single person. My daughter is 9, now she asked me once, why some bathrooms have different signs on them. I told her because different people are comfortable with different things. Some people want more privacy around certain groups. Some people don't really care. The best places give people options when they can. She just nodded. Like, that made perfect sense because it does make sense. It's not complicated. A kid can understand it in about 10 seconds. Grown adults are the ones who somehow turn it into this giant ideological knot, usually because they care more about making a statement than solving the actual problem in front of them. So yeah, that's the story of how our feminist CEO forced all gender bathrooms on the entire office. Did it without really consulting the staff. Did it without offering alternatives. The male employees stopped coming in, productivity tanked by around 40%. We became one of those stupid national news stories everybody wanted to argue about. The board stepped in and forced a compromise, 3 choices instead of 1. Mandatory setup. People came back, the agency recovered, and the whole mess proved something pretty basic. Inclusion does not mean shoving every person into the same arrangement and calling it progress. It means creating enough room for different people to find what works for them. Privacy is not hate, comfort is not intolerance, different needs. Sometimes require different options that should not be a radical idea. But somehow we made it one, and in the process, we nearly wrecked an entire company. All because one leader confused having a vision with being morally right and forgot that employees are not barriers to bulldoze through. They are the people you're supposed to bring into the process. That's the part that still feels almost funny to me. She wanted to include one marginalized group by basically dismissing everybody else's concerns, which isn't inclusion at all. It's just a different form of exclusion with better branding. Actual leadership finds a way to make space for everybody. Not by pretending differences don't exist, but by accounting for them.